little something like
Hello, literates. I'm brittwriterly, and welcome back to Writer's Ambition. For those of you who've been hanging in since episode 1, use a real one. And for those of you who are just finding my humble channel, welcome. We hope you stay a while. So, announcement, and I won't draw it out since I was supposed to announce at the end of my June honesty, and I was just like, this needs its own video. This is a lot of information. The announcement is I am deciding to pursue independent publishing instead of traditional publishing, otherwise known as indie publishing and trad publishing, or trad pub. So let me just walk you through the reasons, because this has been like a years in the making, to be honest. Like, I did not want to do it because I do not have a degree in business or marketing, and writing is a business, right? Like, marketing your book is a business. These authors out here who are just dropping all these reels and doing all these videos, like, it may look easy from the outside, but that is a lot of work on their end to produce all this content, to drum up excitement for their upcoming books or their newly released books or what have you. And I'm talking about trad pub authors who do it when they don't even have to. They just, they want to help the publisher. But when you pursue traditional publishing, when you are in traditional publishing, and Lizelle Stanbury just released a video called 25 Things That She Learned in her first year. And one of the things that she said is, it is the publisher's job to promote your book. It is not your job as the author, because that is why a lot of writers who end up doing traditional publishing choose traditional publishing, because they do not have the expertise or the time or the money, any of those, a mix of those other reasons as well. They don't have it, whatever it is, to take on the sole responsibility of marketing their book, right? And so that is one of the main reasons why I did not want to do indie publishing, because I was like, who's going to do all of that, right? And that's just the marketing. But who is going to design the cover for the book? Who's going to pay for that? Who's going to pay for copy editing? Who's going to pay for formatting? I didn't even know all these things were a thing until a couple of years in the AuthorTube space anyway. So I certainly was like, I'm not in any condition or any sort of position, I'm not in any sort of position to pursue independent publishing. I was in my third year of grad school when I started my booktube, I think, and my AuthorTube, and I was very busy, and I'm still busy. I'm still very, very busy, but certainly at that point, I was just overwhelmed with all the things I had to do for grad school, and I did not have the bandwidth to also start learning a whole book business, even as I'm trying to learn some things about writing for publication, whether it's traditional publishing or independent publishing. I needed to get into some craft books. I needed to get into format and structure, and of like just the writing, not of formatting the manuscript, formatting the book. I'm talking about formatting the story, developing characters. Like, that was taking the whole of me. I was like, I can't do the other thing. And so those were the reasons why I was like, I cannot do indie publishing. I need to do traditional publishing. I didn't even really know that self-pub was a thing. Like, I never really thought about it as a kid. I just read books, but all the books that I read were trad pub. I just didn't know those terms. And so those are the reasons that I didn't want to. But as I continue to write and be more comfortable in this space and be in more spaces where authors are talking about their experience in trad pub, the reasons that I did not want to do trad pub were just starting to overwhelm the reasons that I felt like I had to. And so I guess that's one, let's call that reason 0. I have 4 major reasons and a bunch of other little ones, but let's not make this video an hour. Let's say reason 0 is I'm not a fan of doing anything because I feel I have to. That's reason 0. If I'm doing trad pub because I feel like I don't have X, X, and X to do self pub, with the reasons that I'm going to get into, it's worth it for me to learn that, right? To spend time investing in networks with other indie authors and learning how to how to do that, how to do independent publishing well, being patient in the development of it. It's worth it to do all those things, not to do something else because I feel like I have to, because that would be a disservice to the labor I put into my works and into the works themselves. I don't want to do something because I feel like I have to. I want to do it because I want to. That's reason 0. Let's get into these reasons because some of them take some time to sort of parse out. So reason 1. A lot of literary agents that I queried and wanted to query specifically said they said 2 things. They either said, 1, no submissions or queries with spirituality or religion, or they said 2, only non-Western religions. And so let's deal with those 2 things separately because they take me in 2 different directions. Number 1, of the no submissions with spirituality or religion. #First Fantasy doesn't really have strong religious or spiritual themes. Aaron, right, one of my characters is very much like a Christian and is very much like, I'm not going to do X, X, and X. I have a certain standard of living. I have this sort of moral compass that is informed by my faith. But it's not stated or even addressed a lot. It just is stated, and then it just is part of her character and how she moves, but she doesn't always cite her Christianity. You just have been told that she is. And so that no spirituality or religion didn't necessarily stop me from querying every agent because it wasn't stated super strongly. But other agents who are like, absolutely no themes, obviously I'm not going to query you if you say that. But also, even when I did query, someone was like, oh, like #First Fantasy doesn't really have that. The thing then became, even after I queried, right, #First Fantasy doesn't. But I have a #Second Fantasy. I have a #Third Fantasy. I have Tales of Eliza Black. I have projects that I have not mentioned to y'all at all. And some of these projects do have very strong themes of spirituality and religion and all of those things that is important to me and is part of my raison d'etre of writing. And so even if I can get an agent with a project that is not super spiritually inflected, I wouldn't be able to grow with that agent because eventually I will have books that are very much informed by spirituality and they don't want to represent that, which is their right, obviously. But it just became a thing where it's like, can I grow with this agent? And so that's the first thing. That one thing that they would say, no submission to spirituality or religion, that's one thing that sort of I began to have a lot of pause about. And then the second thing that they would say, or the second way they would say that, or others would say, only non-Western religions. Here are a couple things I feel about that. And I want to say, this is just my interpretation, and I recognize that not every agent that said it means it in the ways that I'm about to break down, right? But also, some undoubtedly do. So, only non-Western religions. Typically, my understanding of what agents mean when they say non-Western religions is they do not want to see, and I'm querying like fantasy agents, right? Agents who represent fantasy. They do not want to see fantasies with heavy Christian influences, right? Here is the thing. 1, it irks me in any circle, not just publishing, but we're talking about publishing, so in publishing. It irks me when Christianity is touted or is labeled a Western religion, because that is a fairly recent label that is informed by fairly recent events in the history of Christianity, right? In the development of this religion, that's a fairly recent label. The Garden of Eden is in Africa. In Africa, not in the West. The Israelites were not in the West. A lot of the events we see in the Bible, not in the West. So it irks me when Christianity is called a non-Western religion, and I realize that it's been given that title because of its ties to colonialism and to slavery, that it seems as if Christianity came from the West in particular historical moments, but those are moments. And so to define an entire religion, which begins at the beginning of time with God creating man, and you want it, not you. And then it becomes defined by specific moments. That irks me. That irks me to call Christianity a Western religion when that is not true. The second thing about that is that there's a way in which that could be insulting, not to Christianity, but to other religions. So I realize that agents are saying that because, oh, we want to see other things represented, right? Some. But I think that underneath that, there's also this thing of like, so you don't want to see Christianity represented because Christianity has a reputation of a lot of things, depending on who you are and what your allegiances are. Like, Christianity has been called homophobic. It's been called xenophobic in general. It's been called misogynistic. And I'm just like, right, do you think that other religions can't be called the same thing? Or is it that you just don't know as much about those other religions to say that? So that's one of my questions. And the other thing is that it feels to me like there might be some exoticization of other religions going on here, that you're fine with them being called fantasy. That's the thing where I'm really like, that could be a little bit insulting. Now, not to me, because I don't have any allegiance or investment with other religions, but for people that do, and you're like, I want to see that as fantasy, but it's not fantasy to those people. So I'm just like, there's a way that could be considered exoticization. Now, that's not a fight that I'm about to have with anybody. That's just something that I think about when I see that being used so often, is like, why are you okay with other religions being used to inform fantasy? That's just that. Okay, so that's reason number one. And I had to tussle with that a lot, and about whether or not I was willing to suppress Christian influences in my writing, and the answer ultimately was no, because if writing is a ministry, if writing is a gift God gave to me, I'm not going to use it and not acknowledge him in the writing, right? So that ultimately, and that was a huge reason for me. That's probably one that I tussled with the longest, even though I tried to ignore it. So that's reason one. Reason two, I can't overlook the many evidences that TradPub disvalues Black voices. I really can't. So we can talk about #publishing paid me, and I've spoken about it on this channel before, so I won't get into it again. But if you don't know what that is, Google it. L.O. McKinney and Tochi Onyebuche started it. But it revealed that white authors were getting paid significantly larger advances than black authors, right? And it didn't even matter how long the white writer had been out or published or whatever. They were just getting paid significantly more. Egregious, obvious and egregious racism. The second thing that really sent me, and it's gone now, but Ryan Douglas on his Twitter, which he deactivated his account or something, so I can't just pull it up and read it to you, but he made a tweet thread on how publishing disvalues Black writers, and said essentially it's a very strange relationship to workers that is really not normal, that you decide to pay someone a year or so after they get paid, or after the book has come out, or that you are not paying them consistently and the dates listed in the contract are arbitrary and often are not honored, right? Things like that. And Taking of Jake Livingston did well on its first year, which is something that he mentions, that when people say, oh, the book did really well, he's like, yeah, I'm not really concerned about that because I still can't pay my bills off of it, and that's what's ridiculous. It performed well, and I'm still not experiencing the financial correlation of that success, right? And so that's that thread. And I wish I could read all that thread, because there were so many little things in it that I was like, And this is what I can't take anymore, but it's gone. So that thread was really, and I don't remember if I sent it to Cache or Cache sent it to me, but either way, I was like, literally, I can look back in our Twitter DMs and I commented, she sent it to me. Cache sent it to me and I read it and I commented to her. So I really need to start thinking about indie publishing. Because for someone to be like, I had a successful year and still be like, I can't pay my bills off of this because I'm not being paid, I just can't square that. I really just cannot square the amount of work it takes to produce a book and then that being the outcome. And that is not every Black writer's experience, but I've heard it enough to be quite okay. Now that thread was taken down, but there was a second thread that broke down the payment thing that I do want to read to y'all because it was very enlightening, and it was also very much like, thank you for this, can't do it. So there is this hybrid publishing author. She does indie and she does trad pub, and her name is, her Twitter handle, I guess, I don't know, is Elizabeth May / Katrina Kendrick. I don't know which one is her trad pub name and which one is her indie name, but they're both up there. Anyway, so this thread takes you through that payment schedule of traditionally published authors, and it expounds upon what Ryan Douglas was saying without the race critique. So she says, so let me talk for a minute about traditional publishing timelines and why authors are making so much noise about payments being split into 4 or 5. Say I got an offer on a book tomorrow. Great, rubs hands. Let's say it's an offer for $25,000. That's fine. That would not be fine to me, but we're going to move on. Would I see the money soon? Well, no. First, the contract needs to be hammered out and negotiated, and this process can take months. So if I were hypothetically offered a book deal tomorrow, I probably would not receive payment 1 until the end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023. And she made this thread on April 8th. So the end of 2022 if you got signed in the first quarter of the year. Okay, we're in 2023 and the contract is signed. Great, next payment is on manuscript delivery. But Elizabeth, you say, what if I wrote the manuscript already? Wasn't it delivered when I signed the contract? LOL, no. Delivery is generally upon completion and approval of edits. I've had first drafts take more than 9 months to arrive in my inbox because editors are busy. They have a lot of authors. So in my hypothetical, my first edit letter arrives in September 2023. Oop, lots of changes. I think I can do this in 6 to 8 weeks. So when you get the edit letter back and you're like, okay, I need to make these revisions, thinking I can do it in 6 to 8 weeks. So I finished in November 2023. Do you see all this labor that's happening and the money is not correlating? Okay, that I cannot. So if I am fortunate, the edits are great and the editor approves and considers the manuscript delivered. So I might get my second payment around January 2024 if I am so lucky. Ooh, that payment I got 1 year ago is stretched. Now on to payment 3. So if it's broken up into 4 or 5 payments, she's getting roughly like 4.5 or like, yes, 4.5 or $5,000, right? So that's over a year, like $5,000 to stretch 1 year. That's not paying anyone's bills, like as a single person, let alone if you have a partner, a spouse, if you have a child, like that's not supporting anybody under any circumstances. Now into payment 3, publication. Awesome. When does the book come out? Well, in the US, trad publishing's lead-in time can be quite long. So like the time that you announce that you have a deal to the time that it's actually coming out. 2, 3, or 4 years after signing the contract. Let's say 2.5 years for this hypothetical. Ideally, I can expect my next payment in September 2025. But is that my final payment? No. 1 year later, on the paperback release, the last payment finally makes its way into my account. It's 2026, and I signed my $25,000 contract 4 years ago. And all of this is the best case scenario with no publication delays, which we've seen a lot of. You're welcome. So publishing has always had very bizarre and outdated payment systems, but splitting payments into 4 or 5 is more recent. It used to be 2 payments on contract and on delivery in advance. of publication. This was intended to support the author through the book's development. The 2 payment system then shifted into 3, on contract, on delivery, then on publication. Oh, fine. But now 4 is the standard and 5 is becoming more common. So when I say that many authors, tap something. So when I say that many authors cannot afford to traditionally publish, it's because of the increasingly smaller payments and the long lead-in time. The manuscript is not earning enough to live on, so many either have day jobs or self-publish to fill publication gaps. And this does not even get into the non-complete clauses some authors are under, where they cannot sell another manuscript in the same genre while one is in development. I have seen some very restrictive clauses that hamstrung authors from publishing in a certain genre for years. I'm a fantasy writer. If there's a clause that says I cannot write or publish another or sell another fantasy until, let's say, hashtag first fantasy is out, like, I'm gonna be, what am I gonna do? I'm gonna have to learn another genre of writing and try to get that in. Like, it's constrictive, and that's my issue. Last thing, a few have mentioned basket accounting. So say your book earns back as $25,000 advance. Heck yes, royalties to live on, am I right? Oh, is your book accounted with another book? Did you sell it as like a package, like a duology or a trilogy? Then you have to earn out that book's advance too before seeing royalties. So the entire book deal, if it was for a duology, if it was for a trilogy, 4-book deal, whatever, if you're in that like restrictive clause, you can't publish anything else in that genre until the entire book series that you've been contracted for is complete, which obviously we know could take years on years on years. So if you ever wonder why so many authors talk about poverty and burnout, it's because there are numerous systemic barriers put in place to reduce their income and prevent them from making a living off their trade. Now, I am not in grad school to get a degree and not use it. I definitely plan on being somebody's English professor or something of the sort. So am I going to be living off of my earnings? No, but it's the principle of the matter for me. And again, she's not mentioning any of the race things that Ryan Douglas did. And I wish I'd taken a picture of that thread because it was such a thorough accounting of all of my anxieties with trusting TradPub enough to publish TradPub. And I just can't. And one of the things that Ryan said in his was that he got like a 10%, he got 10% for his royalties. It was 10%. You can get up to 30. Me and my critique partners did some research on this after reading Ryan Douglas's tweet thread. You can get up to 30% for your royalties. That is not a lot to me. For 30% to be the top, and then this is the treatment, and then this is how the money get doled out, and I gotta what? I'm set. I'm really all set because it just don't sit right for me to bake a pie and then 70% of it be given away forever. Like, as long as the book is published, these are the terms. Nah, I can't. I can't. So those 2 threads, Ryan Douglas and Elizabeth May / Katrina Kendrick, really were like the nail in the coffin for me about TradPub, because I was just like, I just can't sign on for this level of systemic, like, the word is not coming to me, and it's not come to me for the past 45 minutes as I was planning this video. It's just, the systemic yuck, I can't, for lack of a better, longer, more $5 word. The systemic yuck, I cannot with. Like, this, I cannot with. The systemic yuck, I cannot with. Now, if I think of the word before this video goes up, you'll see it right here. But if I can't, I just read a long thread that described it. And I can't. It's just too much, and there's not a real way. I mean, there is, like, right, like, you can have an agent who's like, I'm not going to stand for that or whatever, but I'm not going to be arrogant enough to think that this could not happen to me because it's too many people's stories and I don't know enough, right? So I'm just like, that's not something that I can sign up for, that I'm willing to, like, shoot my shot on that it won't happen to me. I'm all set. So the Elizabeth Katrina thread was actually a mix of reason 2 and reason 3. So reason 2 was I can't overlook the many evidences that TradPub disvalues Black voices. publishing paid me, Ryan Douglas, right? Reason 3 is that the pay schedule is ridiculous, and that's the Katrina Elizabeth thread that I just cannot get down with. That pay schedule, along with the racism that we have seen so much consistent evidence of, and I don't care what anybody says, it's not gone. I don't think anyone even has the audacity to claim that it is. Like, we're still seeing a lot of present experiences of Black authors who are like, yeah, this is my situation. It's on Twitter every other week. I'm good. I'm just really good. If I can avoid that, I am going to. And racism is everywhere. It's the air, it's the water, we're the fish. Like, it is. But signing on to that, I'm all set. The reason 4, a lot of my current series are in the same universe. So let me break this down a little bit, because this is something that I didn't know. If you did, but if you did not, let me tell you, when you do TradPub and you sell a series, you are selling them everything in that book, right? Like, you're selling them the rights to the characters and the magic system, like everything. So which is why all of Leigh Bardugo's books are from the same publishing house, even if it's like houses under them. I think it's Macmillan. All of Leigh Bardugo's books are by the same overall publisher, which is why she can have multiple series in the same world, because the one publisher who is buying all of the books produced from that world. That's the rule. There are exceptions where people are like, oh no, I fought for my work, for the right to my world, and I was able to retain that. That is not the standard. So if, for instance, Penguin Random House bought #FirstFantasy, and I was like, okay, I have this other fantasy called #Second and Third Fantasy. They are different series, but the girls are related. The sisters in #First Fantasy have cousins in Texas, and they are the main characters of Second Fantasy. And then there's another group of sisters in #Third Fantasy who live in Memphis, and they are distant cousins as well, and like there's this whole family tree. And Penguin's like, that's really cute, but we're actually all set on this trilogy. And then I say, oh, but I actually wanted it to be a saga. We're only buying 3 books. So that means, number 1, I would have to squeeze my story for that entire series into a trilogy if the publisher says so, because if they don't buy more of the books, I don't have the right to go and publish the other 2 books of that series from somebody else, because Penguin has the rights to it. That also means I can't publish #Second or Third Fantasy with anyone but Penguin or their imprints. Period. I can't publish my #Second or Third Fantasy with anyone but Penguin and its imprints. And if they don't want them, then those books will either never see the light of day, or they will be significantly revised where there is no stated or obvious connection to #First Fantasy. And those revisions, so that there is no obvious connection to the magic system or those sisters, would be considerable and would change the premise of the novels, right? And so that was another really big thing for me, is that I don't want a publisher to be able to control how multiple series of my books are able to, or whether they're able to enter the world. And so all of these things put together, I was just like, it's seeming like TradPub is just not the move for me. And I did talk to some TradPub authors, and when I was talking to them about these different things that I was wrestling with, they were like, maybe TradPub isn't the thing for you, and if it's not, that's fine. It's not for everybody. And I appreciate their honesty. I appreciate their encouragement to just do what is best for me. And I ultimately decided that it is indie pub. Now, what I would not be opposed to is what Elizabeth May / Katrina Kindred does, which is hybrid publishing. She has an agent. She does some of her books that are traditional publishing. And she also self-publishes some books. Obviously, you'd have to get an agent who's cool with you doing a hybrid. But I do have some like standalone projects that I would not mind going through TradPub, but those are not the books I'm working on right now. The books I'm working on right now are a series or multiple series of fantasies in a large universe that contains multiple worlds. So since that's what I'm working on right now, yes, I'm open to hybrid. But if I do hybrid, that will be down the line. The whips that I'm working on right now, those are going to have to go through indie publishing. And so that is what I am putting my energy into. I'm considering starting a Kickstarter. I am planning to start a Patreon. So be on the lookout for those things. For the comment prompt, what would you like to see on a Kickstarter? Kickstarter has different tiers of rewards. So you pay for whatever like tier of reward you want, be it like a signed copy of the book or like an arc or it's like e-art, things like that. That's what I have seen. I haven't decided whether I'm gonna do the Kickstarter for sure yet, or what those tiers would be. But if you have ideas of what you would like to see on a Kickstarter, comment what sort of tier prizes you would be into. If you're like, Kickstarter is not my thing, that's fine. I am planning on starting a Patreon. That's more solid than the Kickstarter. So let me know what sort of content you would like to see on Patreon. Right? Either or, both is fine. You have been announced. That is all. Thank you for watching. Y'all have a good day. Bye-bye.